Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun.
All right, guys. Today's date, July the 30th, 2022, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm host most Will Buchanan. How the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. If we do get started, guys, we do try to remain family friendly, at least most of the time. Sometimes words do fly, and sometimes there may be things that might be shown that might be too intense for younger viewers. So viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. Well, how do we get into this? I want to say this is sad, but again, I'm not surprised. This really should just been. We really do need a laugh, especially if you comment on God's hot plate, which is practically hot everywhere. But I want to tell the story because, again, we all remember the attempted coup that's known as January 6th. How millions of disillusioned Trump followers decided to basically become terrorists for a day and attack the Capitol building in which the electoral votes were counted. We knew that a lot of people were getting some jail time, a lot of them getting slaps on the wrist. However, one individual has probably gotten the longest jail time so far. This individual that you see right here, Mark Ponder, the gentleman that you see right there, was one of the many that assaulted the Capitol, has just gotten 5 years in prison. So far, the 5-year sentence is the longest in any of these cases. However, he also, like many other people that when they saw this, sat there and said that he thought the 2020 election was stolen. So like him with many other ones, decided to go down there and give him a piece of his mind, and now he's going to be spending a nickel of his life literally in prison. Now, I know a lot of y'all think the same thing I'm thinking. It can only be one reason why so many people were given, 24 months, 8 months, suspended sentences. But again, with the other individual who, like I said, he didn't attack anybody, no damage was done, but he was given the same lengthy sentence as the man who attacked law enforcement officers with a fire extinguisher. Think about that for a second. You got the longest sentence for doing nothing except doing what everybody else is doing. Now, of course, it does say that he did strike a riot shield with so much force that the pole snapped and broke apart as it made contact with the shield, and the top portion of the pole flew off to the side. Which again, this is what they're saying. For all those that want to know, this is what they're talking about. This.
Ryan, you mentioned all the cases out there against the people who attacked the Capitol. Well, there was a conviction yesterday. A Washington, D.C. man who violently assaulted police officers at the Capitol on the 6th was sentenced to more than 5 years in prison yesterday. A federal judge handing down 63 months to Mark Ponder after he pleaded guilty to assaulting 3 police officers that day. So, Ryan, this is a guy who pleaded guilty, said the day got out of hand. He showed up for a rally and it got out of control. The court said that's all well and good, but go to jail for more than 5 years. What more can you tell us about this?
Yeah, that's right. Well, Ponder was one of just a handful of actual D.C. residents who joined the mob that day. As you said, he was sentenced to more than 5 years behind bars. That's tied for the longest sentence that we've had in January 6 cases thus far. In an interview with the FBI after his arrest, Ponder echoed Donald Trump's rhetoric about the 2020 election. He wondered why the Supreme Court and the former Attorney General William Barr hadn't done more and stepped in. And I spoke with one of the officers who Ponder assaulted that day, Sergeant Ganell, and he of the Capitol Police. He previously testified before the January 6th Select Committee and has been present for many of their hearings. And he delivered a victim impact statement in court yesterday. And here's what he told me, quote, "I'm not a vindictive person. I forgive him, but I won't forget what he did. What his actions did was change the trajectory of my life. Instead of getting ready for a promotion and continuing my police work, my profession, I needed to look beyond what I'm going to do after police work. I'm at peace with myself and hope he gets all the help that he needs and comes back as a better person."
Yeah, Sergeant Ganell was on with us a couple weeks ago saying
In the words of the Cleveland bus driver, you going to jail now. But again, it never ceases to amaze me the level of conviction that Trump gets out of these people. I'm just saying, he gets cult-like following out of these people who will attack this very same law enforcement that they swear that they back, back the blue and Blue Lives Matter and all that crap, will simply attack them because he doesn't like it. At the same time, that man is now going to see 3 months in jail. So, Mr. Ponder, yeah, you going to jail now. Moving right along, guys, today when we cover the interest rate, because just like we kind of figured what would happen, because inflation's going up, because they don't want to address the fact that a lot of these corporations that are raking in billion-dollar profits are not getting windfalls, profit tax put on them. The fact that, yes, Trump's tax laws are still in place to actually help the rich and the corporate, yet those have been taken down as well. But because of rising inflation, the Feds, once again, which I want to say historically wise has only been done once in actually more done in that's the wrong sentence I want to use. I think this is the first time that the Feds, I have to go back and look on that, but twice in 1 year have the Federal Reserve raised interest rates. This is now the second time, considering just a little over a month ago they already raised it, and now they're raised again.
Breaking news any moment now. We're expecting a critical decision from the Federal Reserve. The agency expected to raise interest rates for the fourth time this year. Economists expect a rate hike of 0.75% to help drive down inflation. So what exactly happens when the Fed raises interest rates? Well, the price of anything that you put interest on goes up. We're talking credit card bills, new car loans, new mortgages, and student loans, things that tens of millions of Americans pay every single day. Leading off our breaking news coverage this hour, NBC News correspondent Tom Costello, MSNBC anchor Lindsay Reiser, and CNBC correspondent Diana Olick. Tom, first let's start with you. What can we expect from the Fed today? And talk to us about the pressure the agency is under to control a lot of this inflation.
Yeah, breaking news. The decision is in seconds ago. The Federal Reserve is, in fact, raising interest rates by 0.75 percentage point. That's on the key federal funds rate. That's the fund, essentially the rate that is charged between banks. What does that mean? As you suggested, the fourth rate hike so far this year, the Fed engaged in the most aggressive and fastest series of rate hikes that we've seen since 1994, underscoring that this inflation threat to the economy is quite significant, running at 9.1%. That, of course, being a 40-year high, as we've said many, many times. The Fed is also, however, saying that while more rate hikes are likely to come in the future, because, of course, it's not going to be an overnight thing where you bring inflation down that quickly, they also are suggesting that we still are seeing wage gains. In other words, employers are paying people more, and unemployment remains low at about 50-year lows, 3.6%. So it is this very convoluted and confusing picture for economists to get their hands around. It's unusual that we would be in a situation where inflation is running like this, where there's widespread talk that we may be on the verge of a recession. On the other hand, we still have 50-year low unemployment levels. That's just really an unusual predicament for the Fed to be in. The question now, how much will they be raising rates at their next meeting? That's coming in September. The thinking all along for the last month has been they could go by another full percentage point in September if they don't see inflation starting to moderate. The question's going to be, as we now expect a news conference from the Fed Chairman Jerome Powell, does he give us any hints as to whether the Fed thinks that inflation is starting to cool down, or do they still think it's hot and heavy? So all of that will be key as we listen at this news conference in the next 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So again, if you're one of those like me that's, trying to search for a home or trying to get mortgages or credit cards or student loans, yeah, they're all going to take a hit. And I still find it interesting where you sat there and said, well, wages are paying more. I almost want to sit there and say where, which again, depending on the job market, depending on which job market they may be paying more. He's not talking from an overall. He's not talking from an overall job market. He's talking from probably centralized areas, so I can understand that. But yes, unemployment is still down. Let's not forget that the Great Resignation is still going on. that people are still out there. It's like, well, except for Shurion, which again, if you work for Shurion, if you're one of the 750 people that they let go of this week, hopefully you guys find your footing and find somewhere to where you can still earn a living. But again, Shurion's a great example of exactly what's going on with inflation, because these companies out here, a handful of them are making record profits. Exxon, which again we're going to cover very soon, has made a record profit. But these companies that have made record profits are still doing massive layoffs. That's why unemployment. I mean, at the same time, you got to think unemployment's so low. Low being that it's still hovering around the 8 point something area. But again, this goes back to saying that companies are still not paying people so where they can live off of it. Some people have taken on 1 or 2 jobs. Some people have taken on 2 jobs on side hustle. And there are just some people that are just doing anything and everything just to make sure that they can break even and have a roof over their head. Basically because everything is going up but your paycheck. So that's not surprising that the Federal Reserve Board, which again, I do a correction, has raised the rates 4 times in 1 year. Unheard of. And yet down the road, they may be doing it again. So again, guys, I keep saying this entire time, it's almost like we have a capitalist system that is ran off debt. That as long as we have debt, that we will always find ourselves in this hole. But again, they're not addressing the windfall profits tax that these corporations should be paying. They're not addressing raising the minimum wage or at a federal law level. They are not cutting those Trump tax cuts, because trust and believe, we are now midway past the midway point in the Biden-Kamala Harris presidency. Trump's tax cuts have yet to be removed. Those same tax cuts that took away tax breaks from the middle class and lower class and were given to the corporations, the 1%, the rich people, those are still in place. They haven't been removed. And yet that's still not being addressed. Figure that one out. But one thing I do want to point out this week, because for all intents and purposes, if you watch this podcast, you understand that we go after both sides. I go after Democrats all the time. I've been saying that during this election, Democrats are going to have a harder time convincing voters to give them another session to where they have a slim majority or a wider majority in the White House, in Congress, I should say, because their list of campaign promises has yet to be met, with only a few. Sure, they've gotten 2 black women into historical houses. They've gotten Ketanji Brown Jackson into the Supreme Court. They've also got another black woman into the Federal Board of Governors. Again, something never heard of. Understand, historical moments are being made there, but minimum wage is still at an all-time low at 2022. Roe versus Wade was overturned, couldn't be codified because a few Democrats didn't believe in women having control over their bodies. George Floyd Police Reform Act is dead. The Voting Rights Act, dead. The John Lewis Act, dead. Build Back America, which again we're going to get back to, because the Build Back Better plan for America has been now dissected. Which again we're going to get into momentarily, because there's actually some interesting news about that. But with all that being said, Democrats are going to have a harder time this year convincing voters, while Republicans are banking on the fact that a bunch of their voters have amnesia and forget the fact that they're Republican, and they are basically voting against their own interests. That being said, however, there was a bill that was actually passed. That was actually a bill, act that was submitted to Congress to be passed. The PACT Act. For all those that don't know, this is directed toward combat veterans. The PACT itself, we shouldn't call it PACT Act, because it's literally its actual name is Sergeant First Class Heath Robinson Honoring Our Promise to Address Comprehensive Toxics Act, or PACT Act for short. Now, this act was aimed at providing medical care for those veterans who were affected by toxic burn pits. Now, the reason why this is such a big thing is because the simple fact of the matter is Republicans shot this down. Republicans in the Senate, keep in mind, passed the House, went to the Senate. 41 Senate Republicans blocked the bill, including 25 of those very same Republicans who supported it a month ago. Keep in mind, the party of family values, the party that supports the troops, the party that is all for, all for the sanctity of life, has now turned around and sat there and said, we don't like the PACS Act, even though 25 out of those 41 Republicans that voted no just a month ago were for it. Now, the messed up part about it is that was one measure. The other measure was the Major Richard Starr Amendment, which would make medically retired and severely disabled combat veterans with under 20 years of active service eligible for both disability and retirement benefits. That also was shot down by Republicans. I say it again. I don't know why people believe that Republicans are literally and figuratively going to be for combat veterans. They only support profit. Republicans only support profit. The reason I say this, they will find money out of thin air to support a war. They won't pass a dime to help combat veterans. Even more so, Jon Stewart did go on CNN to talk about this. And if you don't, Jon Stewart, he had more than a few words to say to Republicans about their most recent attempts to, do nothing.
I don't know what to say. I've been coming down here for years. I've never seen anything like this. And it's not, as I was saying in the press conference, I'm used to lies. I'm used to hypocrisy. I'm used to their cowardice. I'm not used to the cruelty, like the casual cruelty of passing a bill that they had fought for more than a decade. And look, there are Vietnam veterans on this bill. They've been fighting since the 60s and 70s, people that fought for us, that we all say we support the troops. To pass that bill for them, to give them that moment of exhale. By the way, their trial isn't over. That just means that maybe they'll get their health care, maybe their family get the benefits, maybe they won't have to decide between their chemo and their car.
Right, they still might die.
Well, a lot of them, unfortunately, when you have cancer, and a lot of these guys tell me, they live scan to scan. So they live in 3-month increments, right? And these guys are all, oh, don't worry. This is just procedural. It's a protest against an amendment. It's mandatory versus discretionary. It's all these nonsensical reasons to delay and deny when they pass the exact same bill on June 16th. Nothing's changed.
So Pat Toomey, the Republican from Pennsylvania, he says he doesn't have, it's his amendment.
You should say Patriot Pat Toomey. He prefers Patriot Pat Toomey. That's his given moniker.
His amendment is the one that we're talking about. This is all held up over.
That's correct.
He says his amendment addresses how this $400 billion in the bill can be spent. He says, as it's written, the money can be used for things unrelated to veterans.
That's nonsense.
And burn pit exposure.
It's just utter nonsense. The Secretary of the VA has to go every year, even though it goes into a mandatory spending tranche where it comes to that. The VA Secretary still has to go in every year and explain the appropriation and the use. And the spending of the money is related to the bill. It's not a slush fund.
Right.
But if you want to talk about slush funds, if Senator Toomey wants to explain his fiscal conservatism, then why is it that he voted, every year we vote for what's called the OCO. It's a $60 billion, $70 billion fund that goes on top of the $600 billion or $700 billion or $800 billion that the Pentagon already gets. And it is unaccountable. There are no guardrails. It truly can be spent on pretty much whatever they decide they want to spend it on. Toomey's never raised a peep about it. He's never raised his hand. He's never objected. He's never held up the NDAA because of it.
The defense bill, you're saying? The NDAA,
that's right.
Yeah.
And the Overseas Contingency Operations Fund is a literal definition of a slush fund. And all of these individuals that voted to deny the veterans the health care and benefits that they've been fighting for 15 years voted for this slush fund. So they're lying. A, you can't just spend this money on whatever you want to. And B, when there have been billions of dollars in expendable money that they can spend whatever they want to, they vote for it.
Well,
so this is nonsense.
The Congresswoman Alyssa Slotkin, who's one of the co-sponsors of the bill in the House, when I asked her about this, she said, I'm paraphrasing, it's odd how nobody has any objection on how much money we spend on going to war, but when it comes to taking care of the people who wage these wars.
Trillions of dollars.
Yeah.
Rick Scott, senator from Florida, had a great tweet today. Glad to be here at the VSO to pack care packages for those and honor their service for how much they give to us. And then an hour later went on the floor and denied those veterans health care and benefits. Like, the hypocrisy is so galling. But then you get to a place where I'm at right now, which is, how do you shame the shameless? What will get through to them? The stories that you heard are heartbreaking. A gentleman today told me of someone who committed suicide. Rosie's husband attempted to take his own life based on his desperation with this system and this process of being denied care. And these guys, they act like, oh, don't worry. You know, maybe we'll get to it now. Maybe we'll get to it in the lame duck session. Some of these folks won't be around. They live scan to scan. So they can pretend to be on Senate time, but these other folks are on human time. And that time is precious. You know, Senate time, these guys all live to be 200 years old. They never lose their jobs. They always get their health care. Like, nothing matters to them. Nothing penetrates that bubble that they live in of procedural bullshit.
And he's right. He is 100% right. Can't say, I can't follow up anything more than what Jon Stewart said. He literally sat there and summed it up in so many words that you can't shame the shameless. Republicans have no shame. And it's amazing to me how many people still consider themselves conservative when the GOP party is nothing. They're not conservative at all. They're not completely at all. And yet, you can't shame the shameless. You can't sit there. Every time I see Republicans sit there and say, I support the troops, I would love to ask them, so how'd you vote on the PACT Act? And watch the faces turn. Watch the deflection. Because that's what they do. So it's like, again, I still think, you know, he does bring a point. The Senate and the House need term limits. The presidency has them. The presidency, you can't serve more than 2 consecutive terms. Cool. Let's apply that to the Senate. Let's apply that to the House. Let's apply that to the Supreme Court. No more lifetime appointments to the Supreme Court. Let's put terms on everything. They do not get to ride the pine as many times as they want because there's too much power, there's too much abuse, and not enough oversight. Nothing's keeping them in check. With our whole thing of checks and balances, there is one little flaw in this check and balance, that the terms of that power is not limited to the House, the Senate, and the Supreme Court. Three areas of law and government that have no terms, as long as you get reelected. That's the thing where it needs to change. But again, going back to what I said about what Jon Stewart, I completely agree with him. You will not be able to shame Republicans into doing the right thing. Because if it's not their plan, if it doesn't benefit them, or if it doesn't benefit their special interest people that put them into office, they will vote against it. But moving along, guys, there is some strange news. I never thought I'd say this. I never thought I'd say these words in a sentence, but mention climate change and actually a somewhat of a section of the Build Back Better plan may get passed, and it has to do with climate change, and Manchin's on board. Man, I don't mean to sound sincere about this, but maybe he should have got COVID a long ass time ago. Just saying.
Hill tonight, Democrats are racing to pass that surprise breakthrough deal on climate. It would be the most ambitious climate undertaking in U.S. history. The bill would also lower prescription drug costs, health care costs, taxing the very rich and corporations to bring down the deficit. So do they have the votes with Joe Manchin now on board? Rachel Scott on the Hill again tonight.
Today, Senate Democrats are rallying behind a deal that would make the largest climate investment in U.S. history, provide tax credits for buying electric vehicles, and lower healthcare premiums for millions of Americans. It came after a sudden reversal from moderate Democratic Senator Joe Manchin, who just days ago upended talks over concerns about inflation. But now he's on board.
I just felt there was an opportunity here to really give us an energy policy with security that we need for our nation, but also driving down the prices. The high price of gasoline, driving down inflation was my number one goal.
The bill includes $369 billion to fight climate change, $64 billion to lower premiums for Americans buying their own health insurance. Medicare would be allowed to negotiate the price of prescription drugs, passing along the savings to consumers. And seniors would pay less for medication, with out-of-pocket expenses capped at $2,000. It would be paid for by raising taxes on big corporations and the wealthy. If the bill passes, it would be a huge victory for President Biden, who today insisted it would help fight inflation in a way Americans will feel.
But simply put, the bill will lower healthcare costs for millions of Americans. It will be the most important investment, not hyperbole, the most important investment we've ever made in our energy security.
But to pass, the bill needs the support of all 50 Senate Democrats. And tonight, Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona won't say if she's voting yes.
Do you back this deal? Are you comfortable with the tax increases?
Excuse us, guys.
Have you spoken to the president about it?
But after more than a year of stalled negotiations, the leader of the House Progressives says they are on board.
I think we should get this done. The American people deserve it. We need to show them that we can deliver. Let's just get it done.
All right, so let's bring in Rachel Scott, as we always do. And Rachel, for this to pass, they need every single Democrat in the Senate, of course, to vote yes. Majority Leader Chuck Schumer telling Democrats in so many words to stay focused and to stay healthy.
Yes, David, Schumer not only needs the support of all 50 Senate Democrats, but he also needs them to be physically present here on Capitol Hill in order to vote on that legislation. As of now, Senators Joe Manchin and Dick Durbin are recovering from COVID-19. That could complicate the timeline for Democrats who are looking to get this bill passed by the end of next week, David.
I don't know about you guys, but again, let's put this in perspective. A section of the Build Back Better plan involving climate change, reducing inflation, taxes aimed at corporations and special interest groups, and Manchin's on board. Again, I'm not trying to sound insensitive, but maybe him getting COVID was the best thing ever. And I don't mean to sound insensitive, but would he have done this pre-COVID? I mean, it's just odd that now he's on board, which again makes me wonder in the bill what COVID changes were actually handled. I mean, what was climate change, I should say, because keep in mind, Manchin's from West Virginia. West Virginia is about the coal mining people. We all know coal mining is a dying business right there with fracking. So I'm not sure what exceptions were made when it comes to reducing carbon emissions, because climate change is real. Don't believe us? Don't believe me? Go outside and look at the weather. Every place in America is a hot plate. Alaska is about to become a pool. There is no such thing as zero cold temperatures anymore. Some places are becoming pools. I'm just pointing this out. But again, it's nice to see that Sinema's still alive. Manchin's on board, but Sinema's not. Why do I believe? Because Sinema, again, is an election year. She's going to do everything that she can to keep her seat. So I would not be surprised if she goes along with it. And if so, just like the gun bill that was passed, even though that was more catered to Republicans than anything else, might be the second piece of legislation that Democrats got passed that might have been historically impactful. But again, we will see what comes along, because Manchin may be on board one day and then, may realize that he's back to the old Manchin days and may knock it down. We don't know. We'll follow it as it comes along. However, I do want to cover this again because I keep pointing this out, that companies that are enjoying companies that are enjoying a profit in a pandemic era, mostly gas and oil companies. Gas and oil companies like Gucci, man, every time the person pulls up, quarter tank, full tank, my bank, hey, them folks. That being said, oil executives have been facing Congress again and saying that no, we are not price gouging American consumers. We are not trickling pumps just to basically pump up our profits. We're just good business people. Yeah, right.
Are facing U.S. lawmakers answering questions about investments in Russia and the high gas prices here at home. And today they pledged to move quickly to cut ties with Russia and defended their investments in the country, but they denied accusations of price gouging. Right now, the national average for gas is down from March 11th high of $4.33. And you can see it's now $4.16 per gallon today. But look how high it was a year ago. Today's hearing comes just days after ExxonMobil estimated quarterly profits could total $11 billion. profits, the highest in a decade. The company's CEO insisted the jump in profits has nothing to do with price gouging.
No single company sets the price of oil or gasoline. The market establishes the price based on available supply and the demand for that supply. Continued investments in new production is the only way to achieve balanced markets and more affordable prices that bring real relief at the pump.
Let's discuss with Robert Reich, former labor secretary and professor of public policy at the University of California, Berkeley, and Daniel Ramey. He's an energy policy economist and fellow at Resources for the Future. Gentlemen, thanks for being with us. Secretary Reich, your reaction to what we just heard from the head of Exxon there, essentially saying, don't blame us.
Well, I'd be a little bit skeptical, Adam. And the reason for skepticism is the oil companies are buying back their shares of stock. Last year, the big four oil companies bought back $44 billion worth of shares of stock. Now, buying back your share of stock is completely legal. It does prop up the share prices of your stock. But if you got so much money that you're buying back your shares of stock, why not use the money instead to reduce the price at the pump? This year, we hear that oil companies, the biggest oil companies, are planning to increase their buybacks to about $74 billion this year. Well, why not take that $74 billion and simply give it to consumers in terms of lower prices? This is what we traditionally call profiteering or price gouging. It should be illegal. There ought to be a windfall profits tax. Why should people be paying at the pump so much money so that these companies can essentially prop up their share prices?
Daniel, we know it's complicated, but can you just boil it down? Is greed from oil companies to blame for the high gas prices right now?
Well, thank you, Anna. You're right. It is complicated. And viewers at home and, Americans, especially low-income households, are suffering from these high energy prices. But the finger pointing we're seeing in Congress today from both sides is really shedding more heat than it is light. There are literally thousands of oil and gas producers in the United States, some of them very large, most of them very small, and they do not set prices. Oil prices and gasoline prices are really set by global market forces. And today's high prices are mostly driven by market fundamentals and the Russian invasion of Ukraine, not by oil companies and not by the Biden administration's policies. The best way to reduce exposure to high oil prices is to gradually reduce oil consumption and move towards an economy that's less reliant on fossil fuels, which has the added significant benefit of addressing climate change.
Sure, but that's not going to improve the situation right now. People have to drive right now. Not everybody has an electric vehicle, right? And so in terms of the shorter term solution, let me bump this back to Secretary Reich. You've advocated in the past for increased production by these oil companies. Do you still think that's the answer right now, Secretary?
No, I've not. I've advocated for a movement from oil production to green energy. I mean, wind and solar and so on. And the oil companies,
But right now, what do you do about these prices? What do you want oil companies to do right now?
The best thing to do right now, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse and others in the Senate have introduced a windfall profits tax. That is, you tax their windfall profits. They're making huge bundles of money over and above what they are paying for crude oil. You tax it and you return it to consumers in quarterly payments every quarter. That's the best thing to do right now.
I love Robert Wright because he said something that was so profound that I understand journalists want to get people to speak on something to get their answers, get sound bites. I get that. But I love the fact that he said the one thing. It's like, well, oil companies don't control gas prices, but they reap the profits from it. Well, the prices are closely controlled by the global markets. Which, again, he is right, but in a roundabout saying those very same oil markets, those very same oil companies purchase from. So in case, for anybody that's wondering, it's like, wait a second. So the price of oil is controlled by the global markets. Yes, but that doesn't make any sense because how do oil companies make profits if the price of gas is controlled by them, by global markets? See, there's a little bit of gray area in that sense. Yes, the global markets do control the price of oil, crude oil, because we know Again, Russia is the number 2 producer of oil in the world. Number 1 is Saudi Arabia, which means that we used to, didn't it first since the war began, but Russia's energy, which means their oil, we were taking up to 8% of it to the U.S. The remainder of it, aside from what we produce, comes from the Middle East. Now, that also being said, however, you guys have noticed that they want to blame the war with Russia. But if you really think about it, if we're taking less than 8% of Russia's energy, but we're still getting it from the Middle East, along with what we're still pumping here in offshore drilling, that means that somebody's kind of lying or not emphasizing enough that these oil companies, again, raking in profits, do have some influence or impact on what you pay at the pump. Not just the global markets, because again, everybody from the oil exporter to the refinery to the corporation to the gas corporation, down to the franchise owner who purchases said gas, they all got to get their bags. Whereas you as a consumer are going to be paying more because we are unfortunately dependent upon dinosaur juice until more electric cars are rolling out, which I keep hoping one day we will eventually switch off from the dinosaur juice and go into energy vehicles, electric vehicles, and actually come down off our carbon emissions. At least that's my hope. But I love the fact that Robert Wright sat there and said, yes, you want these corporations to help out the American people. A windfall profits tax that will tax over excess profit and give it back to consumers is a beautiful idea. Unfortunately, because we still have Republicans who will bend forward to gas corporations for people, unfortunately, that may or may not happen, but I don't see Democrats bringing that up as well. Well, at least moderate Democrats. Progressives, maybe. But again, we shall see. Moving right along, guys, I did want to cover this one again because Josh Hawley, the runner, the track star of the Republicans, who was caught running away when the riot started, is now explaining his actions, or I should say doubling down on his stupidity.
Senator Josh Hawley is defending his actions from the day of the insurrection. Hawley speaking to CNN moments ago. Let's get over to Mani Raju. He caught up with Josh Hawley. Mani, what did he tell you?
Well, he was defiant. He recall what happened on that day. He was the first senator to say that he would object to the electoral results of Pennsylvania, and then ultimately Ted Cruz objected to Arizona. That led to a debate that happened on the Senate floor and on the House floor. People criticized him for giving false hope to the people who came here on January 6th that somehow the election could be overturned. And the January 6th committee revealed in their hearing that a Capitol Hill police officer had testified that when he gave a fist pump to the crowd before the violence began, that riled up the crowd. That was from the words from a police officer to the committee. Also, they showed him running, a video of him running from the rioters when they breached the Capitol as the senators were getting into a secure location. So we caught up with him today about all of that, and he made clear that he was not, he contended that this was trolling, and he was defiant in his response. The January 6th committee said that they talked to a Capitol police officer who said when you made that fist pump, you riled up the crowd. Do you regret that fist pump because of that?
No, I don't. I don't regret anything I did on that day. And, it's a privilege to be attacked by the January 6th committee. And I want to say thank you for all the help with my fundraising. It's been tremendous.
What about the video? The fact that they did release that video and showed you running. I mean, what was your reaction to that?
Oh, Mark, this is just an attempt to troll. And listen, I don't regret anything I did on that day. And the reason I'm being attacked by the January 6th committee is because I'm in their way. And the stand that I took is one that I don't regret and one that I won't back down from.
So when he was talking about the fundraising, recall what happened in the immediate aftermath of that picture that showed him with that fist pump. They put that on a coffee mug. He later fundraised off of this, and this is what he was talking about. Apparently, it helped his fundraising. So you're seeing there one senator who objected, one of the very few who did try to overturn the electoral results on the Republican side, making clear he has no.
Well, there's no other way I can say this. He's a runner. He's a track star. He gonna run away when the shit hits. That's not how it goes, but just saying. I'm not surprised by Josh Hawley, running with it, talking about, this is just an attempt to troll. No, it's an attempt to say that You riled up the crowd, and when said crowd would come to the door, you decide to take off. You're like, oh shit, they're really gonna come through here. And so that's not surprising. But it's also the defiant level that it's just that smugness. I've never understood that. Dude, you were literally caught running away from the same mob that you supposedly were in cahoots with. And you're like, well, the January 6th committee is trying to troll. Troll you for what? You ran. You guys talking big. You're worse than some Facebook keyboard commandos out there that will sit there and say, well, had that been me? No, this is not a Call of Duty Warzone lobby room where you think you can just go in and be Rambo. When the crap hits the fan, a lot of folks won't go out there and do what needs to be done, or try to, but they'll sit there and swear from their cubby holes and basements. Oh, this is what I would have done. So yeah, a troll. Then again, he fits right in with Trump. But the next story I got, guys, is a little weird. I won't say weird. I will say unusual. What I mean by unusual is, imagine that you as a black person becomes the manager and take office, and the entire police force decides to resign because a black man took office. There are just some things in life you just can't make up.
Big problems and whispers that friendly Kenly, North Carolina, may not be living up to its nickname after the entire police department abruptly resigned, with the chief placing the blame on the new town manager.
They're not just town police, they're our family.
Leaving some in the tight-knit community of roughly 1,500 concerned about safety.
We're worried about what the future holds for the town.
Other residents speculate that there may be something more behind the police retreat.
This seemed more about power. I feel like it's just a race issue altogether.
The new town manager, Justine Jones, is black. The entire police department is white.
I don't think they support black people. I feel like they, harass us a lot. I feel like they don't want a black woman over top of them, basically managing them or telling them what to do.
I think there's too much jumping to conclusions. We really don't know what's going on.
The town council held an emergency closed-door meeting Friday and released a statement this week saying, in part, the prudent course of action is to find out what happened and not make any rash decisions. In a place like Kenly, 2 square miles where everybody knows your name and your business, mystery is unusual.
It's just weird, and for us to not have any information as to what to expect. Are we going to have police? Are we going to have a town manager?
CNN has obtained 8 resignation letters in total. The longtime chief of police, Josh Gibson, 4 full-time officers, 1 part-time officer, and 2 town clerks. The letters are similar in language, and most cite stress and a hostile work environment. But the letters are short on details. No information about specific causes of stress or examples of what they call a hostile work environment. The letters also do not point fingers at the new town manager, who has been on the job less than 2 months. But Gibson, the longest-serving chief in town history, does. In a Facebook post that has since been made private and in an exclusive interview with Fox News.
She wrote me up for going to businesses and talking with businesses. She wrote me up for talking with council members that I've known for 20 years.
So she was targeting you, Josh. So you think,
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
looking.
CNN has not viewed Gibson's records, and the town would not provide supporting documents when requested this week. Jones started as town manager on June 2nd. The town announced her hiring, approved unanimously by the council, noting her 16 years experience working in, quote, progressively responsible positions with local governments in several other states. Well, Jones told CNN that since this is a personnel matter, she can't comment on the police resignations. The town attorney tells us that he will oversee an investigation conducted by an outside firm starting next week, which is when the resignations take effect. The Johnston County Sheriff's Office, which already serves Kenly, will increase its presence in the town since the police department will effectively be gone.
And so, according to the town's website for the police part, there should be staffing that still includes 2 part-time police officers, Don. But I spoke with the town attorney. He tells me that as far as he's aware,
there simply are no more officers once those resignations take effect next week. I also reached out attempted to reach out to those who were involved in this situation. The attorney for Chief Josh Gibson tells me that he'll work on trying to get an interview, but noted that the chief is stepping back from interviews for a bit because of the immense amount of stress that the situation is causing his family.
Okay. Tell me you're racist without telling me you're racist. Because, guys, there is literally and figuratively no way else to explain that. You're going to stand and tell me a black town manager was hired and the entire police force said, deuces, hostile work environment. This woman was only on the job for 2 months, and they cited police. I can't stress this enough. So police who are trained to deal with high stress situations, who are trained to talk to the public, who are trained to protect and serve, couldn't handle a black woman, as the town manager for 2 months. Hostile work environment. We're getting saw from Laura Ingraham. So would you say she's targeting you? Of all the mayo, of all the raisin potato salad mayo folks, I'll be honest with you on this one. Go. I wouldn't want officers like if being under a black woman and you're citing a hostile work environment, by all means, go. That means there's openings for a chief of police. That means there's opening for officers. But those individuals want to go, then go. It's not a hostile work environment because, again, what other reason do they have except, what's the obvious? If you remove every impossibility, whatever is left, no matter how off it is, has to be probable. And you have a group of individuals who simply left because, and I say because, a black woman took over. What other reason is there besides the obvious? That's all I'm saying. But as we round this up, guys, 2 more stories before we get to our feel-good segment. Again, Congress is starting to move forward, especially when I sit with the semiconductors. For all those who don't know, if you're not in the automotive industry or in the gaming world, semiconductors are still in high demand. From vehicles to cell phones to computers to graphics cards, anything that requires semiconductors is woefully needed. You actually still have car manufacturers who have football fields of vehicles that cannot be used or cannot be fully completed without them. So with that being said, because we usually get a majority of our semiconductors from overseas, and they're having issues, especially with COVID, Congress finally passed a semiconductor bill. The final bill, I think, was like 243 to 187, which again is now going to set up the U.S. to actually compete on a global scale by building a semiconductor factory of our own, which I still think is pretty cool.
It is enormous. Global Foundries semiconductor chip plant in Malta, New York.
In this fab or fabrication unit, how many chips are being made for how many products?
So we could produce roughly millions of chips a day.
A day?
The fab, where the chips are made, about the size of 6 football fields. The process so sensitive a single human hair could gum up the works. Even the light has to be controlled.
Any exposure to ambient light will have a negative impact on our wafers.
The chips produced here go into everything from cars, computers, video games, communications technology, and the defense industry.
We're at $500 billion right now, our semiconductor industry. Conservative estimates, by 2030, we're going to be at $1 trillion. So the question isn't whether or not $1 trillion industry. So we're going to double between now and 2030.
The CHIPS Act calls for investing $52 billion in semiconductor production here at home. 18 states now produce chips and could benefit from the funding. Global Foundries started producing chips here in 2012. New York State kicked in $2 billion, helping the company secure another $13 billion to build a plant, today employing 3,000 employees with a median salary, says the company, of $90,000. At just this one plant, the expected effect of the CHIPS Act funding.
We intend to double capacity, right, in partnership with the federal government, with the state government.
Doubling capacity, adding up to 1,000 more jobs, many of them high-paying, all of it a boom to the area.
In the last decade, how has the economy here changed?
It's just grown.
Leaps and bounds, booming.
It almost seems that it's sort of a bubble.
And the dividends are felt like a ripple effect throughout all the shops and all the restaurants and all the taverns.
Some conservatives and progressives argue government should not be in the business of subsidizing private industry. The industry says a little bit of public financing goes a long way.
And the proof's in the pudding. Look at this facility we have, the number of jobs, the taxpayer return, 2, 3, 4x with the state.
An industry started by America, an industry essential to the tech economy, an industry critical to the nation's defense, an industry the U.S. would like to dominate again.
And they can. I am all for it. This is honestly the economic boom that they keep talking about here. Oh, this is going to be an economic boom. This is going to be. That would be great. Imagine having more semiconductor factories all over the U.S. You would increase production. You do increase jobs. That actually is a job creator, and I cannot be mad about that. But the bill not being passed, we're going to see how that would go. But again, that's something that money can be invested in. Also, a mass transit rail system that can help us alleviate our airline issues can be helpful as well. Just saying, but I know we'll eventually get there. So the last one I got, guys, which again, Raphael Warnock, which again is the first black senator that was elected in Georgia. He is in a Senate race with Herschel Walker. And of course, the last story we got, guys, is that Herschel Walker is kind of dodging him, which again, every Republican's doing that now. I don't know what it is. It's not just Herschel Walker. Raphael Warnock wants to actually have a live televised debate with Herschel Walker. And Herschel Walker at this moment has decided that, no, I'm good. Yet, if you look at and the thing about this is, every time it is brought up, Herschel Walker has sat there and said, oh, well, I'll debate him. He even goes on Republicans' favorite safe space, Fox News, and said the exact same dang thing.
Senator Raphael Warnock wants to debate you. You didn't debate during the primaries where you walked away with 68% of the Republican votes. Why won't you commit to a debate?
Well, first of all, Senator Warnock has nothing else to talk about. He don't want to talk about the high gas prices. He don't want to talk about the high groceries. I've told him many times, I'm ready to debate him anytime, any day. I just want to make it for the fans, not about a political party or about some media. And all he's doing is talking. I want to make it a fair and equitable debate for the people.
Are you worried about the moderator?
For the fans? For the fans? I don't want to do this for any type of political party. I want to do it for the fans. For the fans. Show me somebody who used to be in football, but forgot that he doesn't play football anymore. Jesus Christ. Herschel Walker's a joke. He is. He courted Trump, but then again, so is the political party. So is the Republican Party. It is a effing, the political party for the GOP is an effing joke. Just like today, I said this many times. You want to know how easy it is for a person of color to come up in the GOP? If you stick to their talking points, if you reiterate and you say loud enough and you're defiant and you believe and you call the Democrats a plantation which black people have been on for the longest time, if you sit there and say the Republican Party was the party of Abraham Lincoln, who freed slaves, who freed your ancestors, if you do all those good hitting talking points, watch what happens. You immediately rise up through the ranks. Don't believe me? Herman Cain did it. Candace Owens did it. What was that group that Trump brought on? Diamond and Silk? They did it. Those 1776 twins on on YouTube, I don't really see them much anymore. They came up that way. People of color, when you decide to basically be the Sambo for the GOP, you come up. And so Herschel Walker is doing nothing more than following that how to come up playbook. Keep in mind, he sits there and says, oh, well, Raphael Warnock don't want to talk about the high gas prices. Actually, he does. He doesn't want to talk about inflation. Yes, he does. He wants to talk about everything that's going on in the very same state that you want to run for Senate office in. But you want to do it for the fans. This isn't a WWE ring, dude. This isn't a football field. This is politics. But the GOP, much like yourself, whine and cry when it comes to debates, saying debates are unfair, the moderator is unfair, this, that, and the other. Except the simple fact of the matter is, you're exactly what the GOP is about. They're all about nothing. They don't stand on anything, but they're for profit. That's what Herschel Walker is not saying. And I guarantee it'll be a cold day in hell before he gets on the debate anyway, because if you ever open up his mouth, well, there goes the end of his Senate candidacy. Just saying. But we're going to go ahead and go into our feel-good stories, because usually on How the Frack got here, we usually cover a lot of doom and gloom, sometimes make you lose faith in humanity, but hey, it's the weekend. Hopefully it's clean and dry wherever you are, especially, clean and dry. I know it's kind of like God's hot plate. But if you're in areas like Kentucky right now, please be careful. I understand Kentucky did have some major flooding. There was loss of life there. So hopefully you guys are trying to remain high and dry and, of course, be safe. But with that being said, guys, we want to bring some few stories to you guys, get some good vibrations, put a little spring in your step. I mean, it is the weekend. Try to enjoy it, because trust me, for a lot of kids, they are dreading the fact that because it is the end of July, back to school sales are coming back up. So you know what that means. Back to bus rides and traffic. But anyway, a few stories that we got, guys. This first one I did do over during the midweek review, because again, I love to see black people win. And this one owner of a Saint Tropez rosé is now bringing it to the market. And again, as a person that's just now getting his feet into wine, I still like. I found out that I do like sweeter wines, but you don't want to hear that much about me. Anyway, let's hear about him.
Entrepreneur Danae Burston is making headlines for creating the first entirely black brand produced in Saint Tropez. Well, now he's using his platform to make the luxury beverage industry more inclusive for people of color. ABC's Mona Kozar-Abdi has more.
I can tell you where I was the first time I ever had rosé. It's almost like when you heard that song, your favorite song, you can say where you were. For me, that's what rosé has become. It's that nostalgic moment that transports me back to Saint Tropez for my 30th birthday party.
That's pretty bougie.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie.
That milestone celebration setting Danae Burston on a nearly 20-year journey to create La Fête du Rosé, a salmon pink premium wine label produced in the heart of the French Riviera.
It means the rosé party. Our tagline is it's a party and everyone's invited.
A trip inspired by this line in P. Diddy's 2002 song, I Need a Girl, Part 2.
Have you ever been to Saint Tropez?
It's the lifestyle and culture that has kept him coming back.
This is my drink. This is my place. And Saint Tropez is my favorite place in the world.
A place some 4,000 miles away from his native Baltimore, where Burston said he would dream of one day seeing the world. Burston was raised by his mother, who worked overnights. So as a self-described latchkey kid, he says a lot of times it was on him to stay out of trouble.
It was Baltimore during the 80s and 90s when the drug epidemic was ravaging the city. I would watch Lifestyle of the Rich and Famous every Saturday, and that was my escape. It wasn't for the wealth. It was for the eye-opening experience of seeing the world.
His introduction into the wine and spirits industry came years later while working for the luxury goods group Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy.
And this is an intimidating industry. What gave you the confidence to take this on?
I was trained by the best company in the world in terms of luxury with LVMH. So I was brought up inside of that building working on their wine and spirits, and then working for Jay-Z.
Burston credits his time at Jay-Z's Ace of Spades for inspiring him to disrupt a historically exclusive industry that often lacks diversity in its marketing.
Can luxury and inclusivity exist in the same sentence?
People of color like luxury goods. It's just a matter of other brands welcoming them into the fold. At Lafette, we don't believe in a target consumer. It's really a psychographic play for us. Do you like this music? Do you like this food? Do you like these destinations? If so, you are the Lafette consumer.
In regards to rosé, that means moving away from the playful seasonal marketing that has led to its popularity in recent years.
We all hear that rosé in the summertime, rosé all day. We are unapologetic. We're changing when, where, and who drinks rosé. And that's been our mission since day one.
That has been the consistent messaging since the brand's official launch in May of 2019. But while the concept was decades and a life experience in the making, the future of the company was in turmoil at the blink of an eye.
We were just starting to get our feet planted well in most markets, and then the pandemic happened. March 13th, the world shut down. I probably cried for a couple of days.
Fortunately, the company's luck quickly turned around. Days into the lockdown, DJ Derek D-Nice Jones, a friend of Burston's, held up a bottle of Lafette du Rosé during his Instagram live show Club Quarantine.
Drinking rosé today. Lafette rosé. Drinking rosé today, baby.
The same night, former First Lady Michelle Obama and Oprah attended virtually.
And at that moment, we knew we had to figure it out. So we automatically switched to a direct-to-consumer format.
Reflecting on that moment, Burston called it a blessing in disguise, but also credits his years of studying the industry for the company's meteoric rise.
You have to know the ins and outs. Really, really learn your industry and study it before taking this leap of faith.
What legacy would you like to leave behind?
Shaking this industry up, bringing more people of color into the industry, providing other opportunities for kids from HBCUs to get into the industry. For so long, they weren't aware that there were jobs in the wine and spirit space.
Oh, that's gorgeous. And thanks to our Mona for that report.
I don't care how bougie you get, the fact that you have your own wine says volumes. Says literally volumes. And again, I just love to see, and I will be unapologetic about that. I love to see Black people win. I love to see Black people, go into places that they didn't think we could do the things that's never been heard of, and finally, and it's like this next story about a veteran that's finally getting their flowers. Give it to them while they're breathing. This person deserves this next story that we're about to go into. That person's definitely getting that.
For 2 years old, Miss Ramee Davis has certainly held a lot of titles, but perhaps none harder earned than U.S. Soldier. She proudly served in the 6888th Central Post Directory Battalion, or the 6888. At more than 800 women strong, they were the only all-Black, all-female battalion to serve during World War II. Their tour began as the war ended, shipping out to England in 1945 and straight to these warehouses. There, they sorted mountains of backlogged mail addressed to American soldiers, creating a new tracking system and clearing 6 months' worth of mail in half the time. They worked around the clock, sifting through packages while staring down racism. Serving in a segregated military, they were excluded from some facilities, at times facing open hostility from fellow soldiers. So why serve? Simple.
It's my country too.
And so it is in the city that helped birth the civil rights movement. Miss Davis, the oldest living member of the 6888, is celebrated for breaking barriers of her own.
I never would have thought that anything like this would happen to me.
Presented with a World War II uniform, an American flag, and soon the Congressional Gold Medal.
It's so amazing, and I'm so grateful.
And from a grateful country to you, Miss Davis, a well-earned stamp of approval.
And again, it's about, representation matters, and especially our history. And there is so much more out there, but love to see a 102-year-old war veteran get their flowers. It's a beautiful thing, and I will never complain about that. The last one I got, guys, again, I love when I see our people break barriers. I am unapologetically Black, and this 13-year-old, I personally think she's going to wind up curing every disease we got out there because she's 13, and she's entering the medical field at freaking 13. What am I doing with my life?
The secret that successful people have. They don't sleep, Dr. Ash.
Yes, is so accomplished. She began reading books at the age of 3, graduated high school at 12, enrolled in 2 colleges to earn 2 separate degrees, and now 13 years old,
has been accepted to medical school. She is making headlines, and she is in the building right now. Everybody, please welcome Elena Amelie to the show. How you doing today? It's been a busy day. How's it been?
Yeah. I'm doing good.
Okay, help us first understand how you graduate high school by the age of 12. Did teachers recognize you were so far ahead? How did you do that part first?
The teachers didn't really get me, I would say. So my mom instead homeschooled me.
Yeah. What age, what grade did they just throw their hands up and didn't know what to do?
Well, actually, it was a moment where they thought that I had cheated on the test because they believed that a little black girl like me couldn't get good grades.
Wow.
But I didn't take that time and I didn't give up. I actually used that to move forward.
And I assume you've never cheated on a test in your life?
Never.
Ever.
No, definitely not. And in addition to just excelling academically, you've been pretty busy in terms of philanthropy and community work, and you actually started a nonprofit called the Brown STEM Girl, right? So tell us about that and what made you want to start it.
Well, I started the Brown STEM Girl because I love advocating for girls who believe in going into STEM. And that's what really called me to start this program, because I saw that there weren't girls like me, there weren't girls of color anywhere in the STEM field. And I really wanted to change that because I knew there were girls out there who had big dreams, and there were some people who told me no, and I wanted the girls to be able to not let anybody tell them no. So that's really where it started. I thought that was the most important part.
What's the normal thing you do that's a normal 13-year-old girl type thing? A video game, go ride a bike. What's the normal stuff you do?
I still do normal stuff.
So the normal stuff.
Yeah.
Well, everything you seem to do is extraordinary. And we got something to show you here because I couldn't believe this either. Your philanthropy, your community service, a lot of work that you do. You've done over 5,000 hours of community service this past year alone. So we're going to present you with something that we have gotten from AmeriCorps and Points of Light. They are going to present you with the President's Volunteer Service Lifetime Achievement Award. A Lifetime Achievement Award. She's 13.
Wow. You already achieved in 13 years what many people take their lifetime to achieve.
I don't even know what to say.
Yeah, you don't have to say much of anything else. And your mom is standing here as well. Such a proud mama. Congrats on what you have pulled off here. We know we're going to see great things from you down the road. And thank you so much for spending some time with us. Oh, all right.
Like I said, that kid's going to wind up curing everything. But again, you love to see it. That's why I said I never, ever get tired of stuff like that. That the fact that, kids you get them while they're young, especially gifted, the possibilities are freaking endless. But that being said, it's going to do with this podcast, guys. I do thank you for liking, for watching, for letting me know it's live. I certainly appreciate it. Some shameless promotions. I said shameless trailers. Wrong show. Some shameless promotions before we get out of here, guys. I do want to shout out to my buddy Vaughn, Big BZA on Facebook. Big BZA on all socials. Vaughn Westwood on Facebook. He is actually back doing beats. Yes, he is getting back to his producer roots and getting that old love and feeling. So if there's beats out there, definitely check him out on Big BZA. If you like him, reach out to him. He'll let you know how you can actually own those beats for yourself. But definitely do check him out there. Vaughn Westwood on Facebook. Vaughn Westwood, Big BZA on all socials. Aside from you guys, aside from that, that was a good and terrible transition. But on Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok, BlackBox447 is where you can find me, guys. Go ahead and like and follow me there. I do post reviews on everything that I watch and play, and also do post some gem stuff because I do a couple push-ups. At the same time, guys, I'm all about motivation and just pushing people forward. And honestly, I truly, truly do believe that we just need to be kind to each other. I'm not asking you to be an overall great Samaritan. I'm not asking you to be a saint, but to be honestly decent and kind, because we are all going through different battles. by simply calling or saying hi or checking up on somebody, you might do a lot more than just letting them know that you care. You actually might save a life. So again, it takes zero energy to be nice. It takes everything in you to be a dick. So just be fracking nice. Also, guys, if you're actually going to be out and about among large crowds, please wear a mask because COVID is Decepticon's still out there. So again, if you protect yourself, you protect others, and that's how we're all going to get through this. Hopefully, because this pandemic is still going on, but we still need to be careful. Aside from that, guys, if you haven't already, especially with the Middle Tennessee area, early voting does end. Early voting does end as of today, so hopefully, you guys can go in and vote. Know your candidates, know what they're about, get informed, get involved. Or if you don't like what's out there, figure out how to run for office. A lot of people have done that because they want to change the way things are, and you can't change anything unless you become a part of it. Just saying it from Middle Tennessee. That being said, guys, last thing I say about How the Frack got here, it's all about staying informed. We are not trying to reinvent the wheel. We are giving you all the information allow you to make up your own mind for yourself, but provide a logical perspective that goes along with it. We do a lot better when we're informed. We're progressive. We move forward. We try to right the wrongs of our past by making decisions now that we should have done back then, like electing our first black woman to the Supreme Court, electing our first black woman to the Federal Board of Governors, electing our first woman to a high-ranking position in the U.S. Navy. When we don't learn from history, we are doomed to repeat it. That's what we keep asking ourselves. Why does everything go up by our paycheck? Why are we electing different politicians, but still the same old game in Congress? And most importantly, how the frack we got here. Thank you all for watching. If you watch this on the playback, I still want to know your opinions on everything discussed about that. Aside from that, take care of yourselves and each other, and we will all get through this.